My life, for the better part of my 30s, had settled into a rhythm I both cherished and, if I was being completely honest, sometimes resented. Every weekday morning, the city's low hum would stir me awake just before my alarm. A quick shower, strong coffee, and then off to the library where I curated archives, dusting off forgotten histories and breathing digital life into decaying manuscripts. It was a solitary, deeply rewarding pursuit, one that allowed me to lose myself in the lives of others, often to the detriment of my own. Weekends were a slightly different beast. Saturdays often involved a trip to the farmer's market, a long meandering walk through the botanical gardens, or an afternoon lost in a bookstore. Sundays were reserved for my ritualistic brunch at The Daily Grind, a small, independently owned cafe tucked away on a quieter side street. It was my sanctuary, a place where the scent of roasted beans and warm pastries always felt like a comforting hug. Today was one of those Sundays, and I was exactly where I always was, perched at my usual corner table, nursing a vanilla latte, and attempting to decipher the cryptic crossword puzzle in the Sunday paper. I wasn't looking for anything, or anyone, for that matter. My dating life had been a series of polite failures, amiable partings, and the gradual realization that maybe I was just built for quiet solitude. Not that I didn't crave connection, a deeper intimacy that went beyond shared interests and occasional laughter. It was just that the effort, the vulnerability, the potential for disappointment sometimes felt like too high a price to pay for what often felt fleeting. So I'd retreated, not in bitterness, but in a weary acceptance of my lot. The cafe was bustling, a lively hum of conversation, clinking mugs, and the gentle whir of the espresso machine. I liked the background noise. It made me feel connected without needing to participate. My gaze drifted idly around the room, taking in the usual faces. The couple who always shared a scone, the writer hunched over his laptop, the elderly woman who ordered only black coffee and read a physical newspaper, just like me. My eyes scanned past them, then snagged on a new face. He was sitting across the room at a small table by the window, bathed in the soft morning light. His back was mostly to me, but I could see the broad line of his shoulders under a simple, well-worn denim shirt. Dark hair, slightly messy, fell just long enough to suggest he wasn't overly fussed with perfection. He wasn't looking at his phone, a rarity these days. Instead, he was sketching in a small notebook, his brow furrowed in concentration. There was something about his posture, an intense focus, that immediately drew me in. I found myself lingering, watching the easy, confident strokes of his hand as he worked. It wasn't a blatant stare, more like an extended, accidental glance that somehow became intentional. I'm usually much better at maintaining my anonymity, blending into the background. But something about him was different. Maybe it was the quiet intensity, or the fact that he seemed completely oblivious to the world around him, immersed in his own creative space. He shifted slightly, turning his head just enough for me to catch a glimpse of his profile. A strong jawline, a faint stubble that looked more purposeful than neglected, and a nose that was perhaps a little too prominent to be considered conventionally handsome, but gave his face character, a certain rugged charm. He smiled faintly to himself, a private moment, as if whatever he was drawing had pleased him. And in that moment, something shifted inside me. Not a dramatic movie scene thrum, but a quiet, almost imperceptible tremor, like a distant earthquake rumbling beneath the surface of my well-ordered world. I quickly looked away, my cheeks feeling unexpectedly warm. This was not like me. I wasn't one to fantasize about strangers in cafes. My crossword, however, suddenly seemed impossibly complex. I squinted at 7 across, a 5-letter word for bewildered. My mind was anything but. It was annoyingly, frustratingly clear, focused entirely on the man by the window. A few minutes later, I heard the scrape of a chair and the familiar clinking of dishes. My heart gave a little jolt, anticipating his departure. I told myself to focus, to let him pass by unnoticed, to return to my quiet Sunday ritual. But then a shadow fell over my table. Mind if I... A voice, deep and smooth, cut through the cafe's din. I looked up, my gaze locking with his. He was standing beside my table, a half smile playing on his lips, holding his half-empty coffee mug and his sketchbook. Up close, his eyes were a warm hazel, crinkling at the corners as he spoke. He was taller than I'd anticipated, and there was a relaxed, easy confidence about him that made me feel suddenly, acutely aware of my own awkwardness. "Oh," I managed, my voice a little higher than usual. "No, not at all." I gestured vaguely to the empty chair opposite me, pulling my newspaper a little closer, as if it were a shield. "Thanks," he said, pulling out the chair and settling into it, with a comfortable sigh. He placed his mug and sketchbook on the table. "My usual spot just got taken by a couple who seem intent on reorganizing the sugar packets, and I saw you had a spare." He winked, and I felt a faint blush creep up my neck. It's a popular place," I offered, feeling utterly brilliant at conversation. He chuckled, a low, pleasant sound. "It is. Good coffee, good vibes. I'm Liam, by the way." He extended a hand across the table. His grip was firm, warm, and surprisingly gentle. "Anthony," I replied, shaking his hand, trying to project an air of calm I definitely wasn't feeling. "Nice to meet you, Anthony. Liam," he repeated, his gaze unwavering, a hint of genuine curiosity in his eyes. "You're a regular here, aren't you? I feel like I've seen you around." "Every Sunday, like clockwork," I admitted, a small, genuine smile finally breaking through. "And you? I haven't seen you before." "Just moved into the neighborhood a few weeks ago," Liam explained. "Figured I should branch out from my instant coffee routine. This place came highly recommended." They weren't wrong. He gestured with his chin towards my half-finished latte. "Vanilla latte, eh? A man of refined tastes." I laughed, feeling a little more at ease. It's my one indulgence. Helps with the crossword, supposedly. I tapped the paper with a finger. "Though I'm failing miserably today." Liam leaned forward, his eyes twinkling. "Let me see. Bewildered. 5 letters, 7 across. Is it lost?" I blinked at him. "How did you—" He grinned, a flash of white teeth. "Crosswords are my second favorite Sunday ritual. What's your first?" "My first is usually finishing the crossword," I deadpanned, and he laughed again. It was a good sound, open and genuine. "All right, fair enough. Mine's sketching, trying to capture the chaos and calm of a Sunday morning." He nodded towards his sketchbook. "Though I'm usually better at people watching than actual drawing of them." "Your sketches look pretty good from what I could see," I said, then immediately cringed internally. "Too obvious, Anthony. You were staring." Liam's eyebrows raised in amusement. "Oh? You were watching me?" My cheeks flushed again. "Just admiring your concentration," I mumbled, feeling like an idiot. He chuckled, but it wasn't mocking. "No worries. It's hard to be inconspicuous when you're deeply engrossed in something. I get it. What do you do, Anthony, when you're not wrestling with crosswords?" "I'm an archivist," I told him. "At the city library, I work with old documents, digitizing them, preserving them." "That sounds fascinating," Liam said, his voice genuinely intrigued. "Like a historical detective, unearthing secrets, piecing together forgotten stories." "Something like that," I agreed, warming to the topic. It was rare that anyone showed such genuine interest. "It's quiet work, but incredibly rewarding. You feel like you're giving a voice to people who've been silenced by time." "I can imagine," he said, nodding slowly. "So you like history? Old things?" "Yes, very much so," I confirmed. "There's a beauty in the passage of time, in the layers of stories that accumulate." "I agree," Liam said, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I'm a designer, mostly furniture. I love working with reclaimed wood, pieces with a history. You can feel the echoes of their past in the grain, the imperfections, giving them a new life, a new purpose." "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely impressed. "So you bring things from the past into the present in a different way." "Exactly," he smiled. "We're two sides of the same coin then. You preserve the intangible, I preserve the tangible." We fell into an easy conversation after that, discussing everything from the changing architecture of the city to the merits of different coffee brewing methods. Liam was easy to talk to, a natural storyteller with a quick wit and an engaging laugh. He listened intently when I spoke, asking thoughtful questions that made me feel truly seen, truly heard, in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't the superficial small talk I'd grown accustomed to. It was a genuine exchange of ideas, perspectives, and quiet vulnerabilities. Time seemed to melt away. The cafe cleared out a bit, the lunch rush not quite started, leaving us in a calmer pocket of the morning. I found myself sharing details about my work, my passion for the forgotten corners of history, even a little about my own quiet nature, things I rarely divulged to new acquaintances. And Liam, in turn, spoke of his design philosophy, his love for the raw beauty of natural materials, his recent move to the city from a smaller town seeking new inspiration. "It's good to be here," he confessed, leaning back in his chair, a relaxed smile on his face. "This city has a certain energy. I'm still finding my feet, figuring out my go-to spots. This cafe, definitely a keeper." He paused, his gaze softening as he looked at me. "And meeting you? That's definitely a good start." My stomach did a small flip. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but I could feel a warmth spreading through me, a lightness I hadn't felt in ages. It was more than just polite conversation. There was an undeniable spark, a connection, humming beneath the surface. "I'm glad you think so," I replied, my voice a little softer than I intended. I've enjoyed our conversation too." He held my gaze, and for a moment, the world outside the cafe seemed to fade. It was just us, suspended in this bubble of unexpected intimacy. The air felt charged, thick with unspoken possibilities. Then he leaned forward, his hazel eyes serious, a slight shift in his posture that signaled a change in the tenor of our interaction. His voice dropped a notch, a little more personal, a little less casual. "Anthony," he began, his thumb absently tracing the rim of his empty mug, "I have to ask." He paused, and I braced myself, my heart picking up its pace. Was he going to ask about my favorite type of historical document? My opinion on the current state of libraries? But that wasn't it. His eyes, warm and direct, met mine. "Are you single?" The question hung in the air, sudden and disarmingly direct. My breath hitched. It was the question I always dreaded, the one that usually led to a polite, "No, I'm just focused on my career," or a self-deprecating joke about my lack of a romantic life. But coming from Liam, in this moment, it felt different. It wasn't a casual probe. It felt like a gateway, an invitation. My mind raced. What do I say? Be honest. Don't overthink it. This is good. "Yes," I managed, my voice a whisper. "I am." A slow smile spread across Liam's face, a genuine, relieved smile that made my heart flutter. "Good," he said, his eyes still holding mine. The word hung there, heavy with implication, a silent acknowledgement of the potential now laid bare between us. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached down to his waist. My eyes followed his hand, a primal instinct kicking in. My mind screamed, "What is he doing?" My carefully constructed composure threatened to shatter. This wasn't how these things happened, not in my experience anyway. My brain, ever the archivist, began frantically cataloging all the possible scenarios, most of them alarming. His fingers found the silver buckle of his belt. With a soft clink, he undid it, his gaze still fixed on mine, unwavering, almost challenging. He didn't take the belt off, just loosened it, pushing the end back through the loops, allowing his jeans to sit a little lower, a little looser on his hips. It was a gesture of unburdening, of making himself comfortable, or perhaps of revealing something. My breath caught in my throat, my body tensed, a mix of apprehension and a strange, thrilling curiosity. Was this a prelude? A suggestion? A physical manifestation of the intimacy we'd unknowingly been building for the past hour? My pulse pounded in my ears. I felt a blush consume my entire face, hot and undeniable. He leaned back again, settling more deeply into the chair, the now unbuckled belt a silent, potent declaration between us. The action, rather than being crude or forward, felt vulnerable, as if he was shedding a layer, becoming more open, more authentic in front of me. It wasn't about sex, not directly. It was about comfort, about ease, about a willingness to be completely himself. Or at least, that's how it felt to me in that moment, seeing the slight tremor in his hand, the depth in his eyes. Good, he repeated, his voice softer this time, almost tender. He met my wide-eyed gaze, and for the first time I saw a hint of shyness, a vulnerability mirroring my own. Because, he continued, leaning forward again, his elbows resting on the table, I wanted to show you something without feeling like I was stepping on anyone's toes. He then reached for his sketchbook, opening it to a page he'd been working on. He pushed it across the table towards me, the unbuckled belt still prominent, a silent testament to the shift in atmosphere. My eyes dropped to the page. It wasn't a landscape or a building. It was a portrait, a quick sketch, but undeniably me. My face, caught in a moment of concentration over my crossword, the slight furrow in my brow, the way my hair fell, the curve of my lips. It was a remarkably accurate and deeply flattering rendition. Below the sketch, in elegant, flowing script, he had written, "The quiet focus of a Sunday morning and the subtle beauty of a new discovery." My breath hitched again. The vulnerability of his action, asking if I was single, then unbuckling his belt, now made complete sense. It wasn't a come-on in the traditional sense. It was an act of genuine, heartfelt connection, a prelude to revealing something personal and intimate, a sketch he had created of me, a stranger, an homage to the quiet observation that had drawn us together. He hadn't wanted to present this vulnerable offering if I was unavailable. I looked from the sketch to the unbuckled belt, and then back to Liam's face. His eyes were wide with a hopeful anticipation, a gentle nervousness. He had laid himself bare, metaphorically and literally, by showing me this. "Liam," I whispered, feeling a tremor in my voice. The coffee shop, the world, everything faded away. It was just us and this beautiful, unexpected offering. My heart, which had been in a defensive lockdown for so long, felt a sudden, exhilarating surge of something I hadn't felt in years, hope, and a dizzying, potent sense of being truly, unequivocally seen. The click of the buckle was surprisingly loud in the hushed ambient of the bar. It wasn't a dramatic flourish, no theatrical flourish, but a deliberate, almost tender motion. Alex's fingers moved slowly, unthreading the leather from its loop, and then the belt itself, which he then set gently on the table between us. It was a gesture that stole my breath, not because it was overtly sexual, but because it was so unexpectedly intimate. My mind, usually a chaotic storm of self-doubt and overthinking, went completely blank. I just stared at the belt, then at his hands, then finally at his eyes. There was no leer, no predatory glint, just a quiet, intense gaze that held a question, an invitation, and perhaps a raw vulnerability I hadn't anticipated. His lips curved into a faint, almost shy smile, a subtle shift that softened the rugged edges of his face. "Comfort," he finally murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the air. Or maybe shedding a layer. He leaned back slightly, his posture relaxing, but his eyes never left mine. It's easier to talk when you're not held so tightly, wouldn't you agree, Anthony? My name, spoken with such gentle familiarity, felt like a caress. I swallowed, trying to find my voice. My heart was thrumming against my ribs, a frantic drum solo. This wasn't the aggressive come-on I might have braced myself for, nor was it the casual flirtation I was used to. This was something else entirely. A quiet declaration of intent, a request for honesty. I suppose so," I managed, my voice a little hoarse. My gaze flickered to the empty chair beside me. A part of me wanted to bolt, to escape this intense, unfamiliar pressure. Another part, the one that had been yearning for something real, was utterly captivated. It's quite a move, Alex. He chuckled, a warm, genuine sound that dispelled some of the tension. Is it? I thought it might be, but I figured, why waste time on pretense? If we're going to talk about being single, about what we're looking for, then let's truly talk. He gestured subtly to the now unbelted waist of his jeans. This isn't about, well, not yet anyway. This is about showing I'm willing to be uncomfortable, to take a risk, to be unbuttoned in a way that's more than just physical. The metaphor landed, resonating deep within me. Unbuttoned. The idea of peeling back layers, of revealing the tender, vulnerable core, was both terrifying and incredibly alluring. I'd spent so much of my adult life carefully buttoned up, presenting a polished, capable facade to the world. The thought of letting someone see the messy, insecure parts of me was a prospect I usually avoided at all costs. But Alex wasn't asking me to do it alone. He was leading by example. Unbuttoned, I repeated, a small smile finally gracing my lips. Okay, that's brave, Alex. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the table, his gaze still unwavering. Is it? Or is it just tired of playing games? I'm 36, Anthony. I've done the casual thing, the hookup culture, the endless dating apps that feel more like shopping for groceries. I'm looking for something more. Something deeper. And that starts with honesty, doesn't it? His words struck a chord so profound it felt like he'd reached into my chest and plucked a string I didn't even know existed. 36. I was 34, close enough in age to understand the weariness he spoke of, the fatigue of the performative dance, the constant filtering of self, the effort to appear effortlessly desirable. I'd felt it all, that ache for authenticity. It does, I admitted, my voice softer now, less guarded. It really does. I took a slow sip of my beer, the cold liquid a welcome contrast to the warmth spreading through me. So you unbuckled your belt to tell me you're looking for depth? I teased gently, a hint of my usual playful sarcasm returning. He grinned, a flash of white teeth against his tanned skin. Among other things, it's a physical manifestation of an emotional offering, a sign that I'm not here to bullshit or to hide behind a facade. I'm here, Anthony. All of me. He paused, then added, his voice dropping to a more serious tone, and I'm hoping you might be willing to be here too. Unbuttoned, if you will. The weight of his expectation, gentle as it was, settled on me. It was a challenge, certainly, but one wrapped in an incredibly appealing vulnerability. My defenses, usually so quick to deploy, felt porous. Alex wasn't demanding anything. He was inviting. It's a lot to take in, I confessed, running a hand through my hair. I'm used to a different kind of opening gambit. I gathered, he said, a knowing twinkle in his eyes. You seem like a man who has his guard up, Anthony, and for good reason, I imagine. But I'm hoping to find a way past it, if you'll let me. The frankness was disarming. I found myself wanting to open up, to explain why my guard was so high, to trace the scars that had made me so cautious. It wasn't just a general cynicism about dating, it was a specific history of trusting too easily, of investing too much and being left with the emotional wreckage. It's a long story, I began, then hesitated. Was this too much, too soon? But his gaze remained steady, patient, encouraging. My last serious relationship, it ended badly. Not with a bang, but a slow, painful whimper. We'd been together for 5 years. 5 years, Alex. And one day, he just decided he wanted something else. Someone else, to be precise. And I was left picking up the pieces, wondering what I'd done wrong, what I could have changed, if I was even capable of holding on to love. The words tumbled out, raw and unpolished, surprising even myself. Alex listened, his expression unwavering, a quiet empathy in his eyes that made me feel seen, not judged. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes. He just listened. It's been almost 2 years since then, I continued, feeling a strange lightness now that the words were out. And I've dated, of course. Casual things, mostly to prove to myself I still could, I suppose. But nothing stuck. Nothing even came close to this. I gestured vaguely between us, to the charged space that felt so much bigger than just two men in a bar. This feeling of potential, and it scares the hell out of me. He nodded slowly. That's honest, Anthony, and I appreciate it. It sounds like a deep cut, and those take time to heal. You learn to live with the scar, but it changes you, doesn't it? It does, I confirmed, a lump forming in my throat. It makes you question everything, your judgment, your worth, your ability to truly connect. I understand that feeling, he said, his voice softening. My last relationship wasn't 5 years, but it was 3, and it ended because we wanted different things. I wanted roots, a home, a shared future. He was still chasing the wind, metaphorically speaking. It wasn't a dramatic betrayal, but a slow realization that our paths were diverging. And that can be just as painful, the quiet erosion of a shared dream. We sat in silence for a moment, two strangers connected by the quiet ache of past heartbreaks, the shared experience of dreams deferred. The noise of the bar faded into a distant hum. It was just us, in this bubble of shared vulnerability. So you're looking for roots now? I asked, breaking the silence, my voice imbued with a curious hope. More than ever, he affirmed, his gaze meeting mine, earnest and steady. I'm tired of transient connections. I want something real, something that lasts, a partner, a life, the whole messy, beautiful thing. He leaned back again, a sigh escaping him. It feels a bit cliché to say it out loud, I know, but it's true. Clichés exist for a reason, I pointed out, a genuine smile forming. Because they're often rooted in universal truths. And that's what I'm looking for too, Alex. That messy, beautiful thing. I don't know how to trust that it's possible anymore. You don't have to trust it's possible today, Anthony, he said, his voice reassuring. You just have to be open to the possibility. And maybe, just maybe, give us a chance to explore it together, slowly, at your pace. The "at your pace" was key. It took away the pressure, the looming expectation of instant intimacy that so often accompanied new connections. He wasn't rushing me. He was offering a journey. Okay, I said, the word feeling both small and monumental. Okay, Alex, I'm open to the possibility. A genuine, radiant smile lit up his face, crinkling the corners of his eyes. Good. That's a start. A very good start. He then picked up his belt from the table, not to rebuckle it, but to casually loop it over his hand. So tell me about Anthony, beyond the relationship history. What makes you tick? What are your passions? Your strange quirks? Your favorite comfort food when the world feels too much? And just like that, the conversation flowed, easy and natural, unburdened by the usual first date anxieties. We talked for what felt like hours, the questions and answers weaving an intricate tapestry of our lives. I discovered Alex was a landscape architect, passionate about sustainable design and the beauty of natural spaces. He spoke with such enthusiasm about his projects, the way he envisioned a barren patch of land transformed into a vibrant ecosystem, that I found myself captivated. His hands, which had so deliberately unbuckled his belt, moved expressively as he described contour lines and native flora. I told him about my work in marketing, the creative challenges, and the occasional frustrations. I found myself sharing stories about my childhood, my quirky family, my love for obscure indie films, and my disastrous attempts at baking sourdough. I even confessed my irrational fear of pigeons, which made him laugh, a deep, resonant sound that made my stomach do a funny little flip. He told me about his quiet evenings spent sketching, his travel dreams, a desire to hike the Patagonian trails, and his deep affection for his scruffy terrier mix, Buster, a rescue dog he'd adopted 2 years prior. "Buster's my main man," he'd said with a soft smile. "He reminds me every day about unconditional love and the importance of a good belly rub." The sheer volume of detail we exchanged, the depth of the insights we offered into our lives, was staggering for a first meeting. With each revelation, the space between us seemed to shrink, filled not with tension, but with understanding. We found common ground in our shared love for long walks, our preference for quiet evenings over loud parties, and a surprisingly specific mutual appreciation for jazz fusion from the late 70s. Who knew? As the evening wore on, the bar began to empty. The bartender gave us a subtle, knowing glance as he wiped down the counter. We were the last ones left, lost in our own world. My initial anxiety had long since dissipated, replaced by a profound sense of ease and an almost giddy excitement. It felt right. "Wow," I finally said, glancing at my watch and seeing that it was well past midnight. "I haven't talked this much to a stranger in, well, ever, I think." Alex smiled, his eyes warm. "Me neither, Anthony. It's refreshing, like a deep breath after holding it for too long." He picked up his belt again, this time to actually put it back on. The movement felt different now, no longer a symbolic gesture, but a return to the practical. He stood up, stretching slightly, and I noticed the easy grace in his movements, the subtle ripple of muscle beneath his shirt. "I should probably head home," I said, a pang of reluctance hitting me. I didn't want the evening to end. "I imagine Buster is wondering where I've gotten to," he agreed, but his gaze lingered on mine, an unspoken question hanging in the air. Would you like to continue this, Anthony? Maybe a proper date, dinner, or just a walk with Buster in the park?" "I'd like that very much, Alex," I said, my voice feeling unusually soft. "All of it. A proper date. A walk with Buster. Everything." He grinned, a genuine, joyful expression that made my heart leap. "Good. I was really hoping you'd say that." He moved around the table, approaching my side. My breath hitched. This was the moment. The closing of the first chapter, the opening of the next. He extended a hand, not for a handshake, but for a gentle touch on my arm, his fingers warm against my skin. "It's been an incredible evening, Anthony. Truly." "It has," I agreed, meeting his gaze. My entire being was screaming for him to lean in, to kiss me. The air was charged, thick with unspoken desire and budding affection. He did lean in, slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned in too, meeting him halfway. His lips were soft, warm, and tasted faintly of the craft beer we'd been drinking. It wasn't a demanding kiss, not overtly passionate, but it was deep and searching, filled with the promise of all the conversations we'd shared, all the vulnerabilities we'd laid bare. It was a kiss that sealed the unbuttoning, a silent agreement to explore what lay beneath. When he finally pulled back, just inches from my face, his eyes were clouded with a warmth that mirrored my own. "Good night, Anthony," he whispered, his thumb gently stroking my cheek. "Good night, Alex," I replied, my voice a breathy whisper. I wanted to tell him so much more, that I felt an inexplicable connection, that he had already chipped away at walls I thought were impenetrable, that this evening had been a revelation. But the words felt too big, too soon. He gave my arm a final squeeze, then turned and headed towards the door. I watched him go, a sense of wonder settling over me. He paused at the exit, turning back to give me one last smile, a silent promise hanging in the air. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in the dimly lit bar, the scent of his cologne still lingering, the memory of his lips a warm imprint on mine. I stood there for a long moment, replaying the entire evening in my mind, from the moment he asked if I was single, to the deliberate unbuckling of his belt, to the long, deep conversation, and finally, that soft, incredible kiss. It was an unconventional beginning, certainly, a bold and unexpected move that had somehow bypassed all my usual defenses and gone straight for the heart. As I finally gathered my things, feeling an unfamiliar lightness in my step, I realized something profound. Alex hadn't just unbuckled his belt. He had subtly, gracefully, and with incredible courage begun to unbutton me. And the terrifying, exhilarating truth was, I was letting him. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, this time, the messy, beautiful thing might actually be within reach. The journey, I knew, would be complex, filled with the anxieties and joys that come with true vulnerability. But for now, as I stepped out into the cool night air, all I felt was the exhilarating promise of what lay beyond the buckle. The soft glow of the table lamp cast long, intimate shadows across Mark's living room. We were sprawled on his plush, oversized couch, half-eaten takeout containers forgotten on the coffee table. The jazz music, barely audible, wove itself into the comfortable silence that had settled between us. It wasn't the silence of awkwardness, but the kind that speaks volumes about shared understanding and growing ease. My hand, almost unconsciously, found its way to his, our fingers intertwining. A silent anchor in the whirlwind of emotions I'd been navigating since we met. It had been weeks since that first dizzying night, weeks of late-night calls, impromptu coffee dates, and evenings that stretched into early mornings. Each encounter felt like peeling back another layer of an exquisitely crafted onion, revealing a deeper, more vibrant hue beneath. Mark was a kaleidoscope of unexpected colors, his sharp wit often softened by a disarmingly gentle gaze, his seemingly strong resolve occasionally punctuated by moments of quiet introspection that hinted at deeper currents within him. I was falling, slowly but surely, and the sensation was both exhilarating and terrifying. Tonight felt different, though. The air was charged, not with the initial electric spark of new attraction, but with a weighty sense of impending significance. We'd spent the evening talking about everything and nothing. Childhood memories, dreams for the future, the mundane irritations of our workdays. But there was a palpable shift when Mark started talking about his family, a topic he usually skirted with a light-hearted deflection. My dad was a tough man, he began, his voice dropping, almost a whisper against the jazz. Not abusive, not in the overt sense, but he had a way of making you feel like you always had to earn your place, earn his approval, never just given. He paused, his gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the wall. It made me strive, I guess, always pushing, always trying to be enough, but it also taught me to keep a lot inside. My heart ached for the younger Mark, the one who had navigated that emotional landscape. I squeezed his hand gently. That's a heavy burden to carry, Mark, to always feel like you're on trial. He turned to me then, his eyes, usually so bright and full of life, clouded with a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. It is, and it's something I'm still learning to undo, to just be, to allow myself to be seen, imperfections and all, and still feel worthy. A faint, self-deprecating smile touched his lips. It's why I'm usually so guarded, I think. You've probably noticed. I nodded slowly. I had noticed. His effortless charm often masked a subtle reticence, a careful selection of what he chose to reveal. It was part of his allure, a puzzle I found myself increasingly drawn to solve. I have, but I've also seen glimpses beneath that guard, Mark, glimpses I really appreciate. He held my gaze, and for a moment, the world outside this room ceased to exist. It was just us, two souls, hovering on the precipice of something profound. The vulnerability in his eyes pulled at something deep within me, a recognition of my own ingrained fears and defenses. How many times had I built walls, brick by emotional brick, convinced that revealing too much would only lead to inevitable heartbreak? My past relationships, each one ending with a quiet, predictable fizzle rather than a dramatic explosion, had reinforced a painful narrative. If you don't fully invest, you can't fully lose. But Mark was making me question that narrative, challenging my carefully constructed fortress of emotional self-preservation. I started, the words catching in my throat for a moment before I pushed them out. I get that. I really do. My last serious relationship, well, it wasn't serious for very long. I realized I was holding back so much. Not because I didn't care, but because I was terrified of caring too much, of being hurt, of ending up alone again, picking up the pieces. The confession felt raw, exposing a corner of my soul I usually kept under lock and key. It felt liberating, too, in Mark's presence. He listened, his thumb gently stroking the back of my hand, his gaze unwavering. When I finished, he didn't offer platitudes or try to fix it. He simply nodded, a profound understanding etched on his face. It's a common defense mechanism, Anthony. We build these walls, these elaborate excuses, because the alternative, truly letting someone in, feels like signing up for potential pain. But what if it's also signing up for incredible joy? What if the risk is worth the reward? His words hung in the air, potent and challenging. He wasn't just talking about us. He was speaking to a universal truth about human connection. I found myself tearing up slightly, surprised by the sudden welling of emotion. Mark shifted closer, putting an arm around my shoulders, pulling me gently into his side. My head rested against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart, a comforting counterpoint to the storm brewing inside me. "It's just scary," I mumbled, my voice muffled against his shirt. "Really scary." He chuckled softly, the sound vibrating through me. "I know, Anthony. Believe me, I know. I feel it too sometimes. That little voice that says, 'Pull back, protect yourself.' But then I look at you." He paused, and I felt his grip tighten slightly. "And I think maybe, just maybe, this time it's worth pushing through the fear." We stayed like that for a long moment, the world outside forgotten. The quiet intimacy of the moment was overwhelming, a powerful current drawing us closer. I could feel the warmth of his body, the subtle scent of his cologne, the comforting weight of his arm around me. It was a cocoon of safety and burgeoning desire. Then, he gently lifted my chin, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw. His eyes, dark and searching, met mine. "Anthony," he began, his voice low, a husky whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "Are you single? Truly single?" The question, so deceptively simple, carried an unexpected weight. It wasn't just about my relationship status, I realized. It was about whether I was emotionally available, whether my heart was truly open and unguarded, or if past hurts still held me captive. It was a challenge, an invitation, a test wrapped in a tender query. My breath hitched, all my walls, all my carefully constructed defenses, suddenly felt flimsy and transparent under his intense gaze. My mind raced, a torrent of fears and hopes clashing within me. Was I truly single? Was I ready to shed the armor I'd worn for so long? The question demanded an honesty I hadn't prepared for. "Yes," I finally managed, the word barely a whisper, imbued with more meaning than a simple affirmation. "Yes, Mark, I am." A slow smile spread across his face, a mixture of tenderness and raw desire. He maintained eye contact, his gaze never leaving mine. And then, with a deliberate slowness that made my heart pound against my ribs, he reached down. My eyes followed his hand as it went to his belt. Each movement was measured, unhurried, agonizingly sensual. The slight clink of the buckle, the soft swish of the leather as he loosened it, then unfastened it completely. It wasn't a crass gesture, not an immediate demand for physical intimacy. It was something far more profound. It was an act of deliberate vulnerability, a symbolic shedding of a layer, an invitation to a deeper intimacy that transcended the physical. His eyes never left mine, asking, "Are you ready for this? Are you ready for me to be this open with you? Are you willing to be this open with me?" My breath caught in my throat. Every fiber of my being was alive, attuned to this moment. Fear warred with an overwhelming wave of attraction and a deep, undeniable longing for connection. This wasn't just about clothes, it was about barriers. He was symbolically undoing his own, inviting me to witness his rawest self, and implicitly, to do the same. He leaned in closer, his gaze still holding mine captive, his hand now resting on my thigh, sending a jolt of heat through me. "Good," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Because I don't want any doubt. Not tonight. Not ever, if I can help it." Then he kissed me, and it was unlike any kiss we'd shared before. It was deep, hungry, and utterly consuming, a desperate melding of souls. His lips were soft, yet firm, tasting of forgotten takeout and something uniquely Mark. It was a kiss that spoke of promises, of vulnerability acknowledged, of a future he was silently asking me to step into with him. My hands found their way to his hair, clutching at the soft strands, pulling him closer, desperate to feel every inch of him. The world tilted on its axis, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt utterly, completely, and terrifyingly alive. The night unfolded in a haze of sensation and burgeoning emotion. Clothes were shed, slowly, reverently, like precious artifacts being unveiled. Each touch, each whispered word, each shared breath felt charged with a significance I couldn't quite grasp, but deeply felt. There was an intense focus on connection, on communication, on ensuring that every step we took was mutual, wanted, and cherished. Mark's tenderness was overwhelming, his awareness of my potential discomfort, my past anxieties, almost palpable. He moved with a reverence that made me feel utterly cherished, utterly safe. "Are you okay, Anthony?" he'd whisper, pausing, his eyes searching mine, making sure I was truly present, truly willing, and each time I'd nod, a soft, breathless, "Yes, Mark, more than okay." Because I was. I was shedding my own layers, not just of clothing, but of fear, of guardedness, of all the emotional baggage I'd carried. In his arms, in his gaze, I felt seen, truly seen, for the first time in what felt like forever. The culmination was not an end, but a beginning. It wasn't just physical release, it was an emotional explosion, a profound sense of connection that left me trembling, tears pricking at my eyes. Lying intertwined afterwards, the soft lamplight still casting its intimate glow, I felt a strange mixture of elation and profound terror. Elation for the incredible intimacy we had just shared, for the undeniable connection blossoming between us. Terror because this was it. This was the point of no return. I had let him in, fully. "Hey," Mark whispered, his lips brushing my hair as he held me close, his fingers tracing patterns on my back. "What's going on in that beautiful mind of yours?" I sighed, a long, shaky breath. "It's a lot, Mark. It's everything. I'm happy. So incredibly happy, but also terrified." He tightened his hold. "Terrified of what?" "Of this," I admitted, my voice small. "Of how fast it's moving. Of how much I feel for you. I haven't felt this way in years. And with that comes the fear of it ending, of being hurt again." The words tumbled out, raw and vulnerable, but without the usual crushing weight of shame. He was silent for a moment, and I braced myself for a dismissal, a quick reassurance that didn't quite land. But Mark wasn't like that. He was thoughtful, deliberate. "I understand that fear, Anthony," he said softly, his voice resonant in the quiet room. "Truly, it's valid. But I also want you to know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And I'm not going to hurt you. Not intentionally, anyway." He chuckled, a low, warm sound. Relationships are messy, complicated things. They require work, honesty, and a willingness to be vulnerable, even when it's terrifying. But I'm willing to put in that work, Anthony. Are you? His directness, his sincerity was disarming. It wasn't just empty words, it was a commitment, a promise, whispered in the aftermath of shared intimacy. I am, I said, my voice clearer now, more certain. I am willing. For you, Mark, I think I'm willing to risk it all. He kissed the top of my head, a tender, possessive gesture that settled something deep within me. Good, because I'm feeling a lot for you too, Anthony, more than I thought possible right now, and I don't want to shy away from it. We spent the rest of the night in a cocoon of quiet intimacy, talking in hushed tones, sharing fragments of our lives, our dreams, our anxieties. It was a beautiful, terrifying dance of two souls finally allowing themselves to connect on a profound level. The next morning, the world outside felt both the same and utterly transformed. The sunlight streaming through Mark's window seemed brighter, the chirping of birds louder, more vibrant. As I watched him sleep, his face relaxed and peaceful. A wave of profound affection washed over me. This was real. This was happening. And it was beautiful. But the real world, as it always does, eventually intruded. As we were making breakfast, a surprisingly domestic and comforting scene of sizzling bacon and scrambled eggs, Mark's phone buzzed with an insistent ring. He glanced at the caller ID, and a flicker of something unreadable crossed his face. "It's my sister," he said, picking it up. "Excuse me for a second." He stepped away into the living room, his voice dropping, though I could still catch snippets of the conversation. "Yes, Maria. No, I haven't forgotten. Look, it's just a busy week, you know." "The trip?" "Yes, of course, the trip is still on. I told you I'd be there for Mom." My heart sank a little. The trip. He had mentioned it a few times, a long-planned family vacation to visit their mother overseas, a trip that would take him away for almost 2 weeks. I had conveniently pushed it to the back of my mind, not wanting to think about the looming separation. Now it was right there, staring me in the face, an unwelcome reminder of the impending distance. When he returned to the kitchen, a slight frown creased his brow. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He sighed, running a hand through his already tousled hair. "Yeah, just Maria being Maria. She's a stickler for dates and plans, always has been. And with the trip coming up, she's extra on edge." He looked at me, a softer expression replacing the frown. "Sorry, just a little family drama." "No, don't apologize," I said, offering a small, reassuring smile. "It's fine. So, the trip is soon then?" "Yeah," he confirmed, pouring 2 glasses of orange juice. "Leaving next Friday. I'll be gone for about 12 days. He paused, looking directly at me. "It feels like terrible timing now, just when this is happening." He gestured vaguely between us. My stomach fluttered with a mix of disappointment and a familiar pang of anxiety. 2 weeks felt like an eternity, especially after the intensity of the night before. Would this burgeoning connection, this fragile new intimacy, survive such a separation? The fear of abandonment, so recently quelled, began to stir again. "It is a bit of a bummer," I admitted, trying to keep my voice even. "But family is important, and it was planned long ago." He reached across the counter, taking my hand. "It is, but I don't want you to think this means anything less to me, Anthony. Quite the opposite. If anything, it makes me wish I could just push pause on life." His thumb stroked my skin. "We'll call, we'll text. It won't be ideal, but we'll make it work." I wanted to believe him. I really did. His sincerity radiated off him, a tangible warmth. But the little voice of doubt, the one that always whispered stories of past disappointments, was already making itself heard. What if absence makes the heart grow fonder for someone else? What if this intense connection is just a temporary high and distance will reveal its fragility? "I know," I said, forcing a smile. "We will. It'll be fine." but the underlying current of unease persisted. Later that afternoon, after a lingering goodbye that involved far too many kisses and promises to text, I found myself back in my own apartment. The quiet felt different now, imbued with both the lingering scent of Mark's presence and the unsettling anticipation of his impending departure. I walked her through my familiar rooms, but everything seemed to echo with a new awareness, a new dimension added to my life. I called Liam, my best friend, needing to download the entirety of the last 24 hours. "Dude, I think I'm in deep trouble," I announced as soon as he picked up. Liam, ever the steady, grounding force, chuckled. "What kind of trouble? The good kind, I hope, given how quiet you've been about Mark lately." "The best kind and the worst kind all rolled into one," I confessed, then launched into a detailed account of the previous night. The vulnerability, the conversation, the profound intimacy, and yes, the unbuckling belt moment. Described with all the emotional weight and less of the actual mechanics. Liam listened patiently, interjecting with an occasional "wow" or "no way." When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Anthony," he finally said, his voice softer than usual, "that sounds incredible. Like, truly incredible. You haven't sounded this excited, this genuinely alive, about anyone in years, maybe ever." "I know," I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "That's the scary part. It feels so good, so right. But then, he just told me he's going away for 2 weeks next Friday. A family trip overseas." A beat of silence. "Ah," Liam said, the understanding dawning. "The classic new relationship distance test. That's rough timing." "Tell me about it," I muttered. I just... I'm terrified, Liam. What if this intense thing we have is just a bubble, and 2 weeks apart will make it pop? What if he meets someone? What if I overthink everything and push him away?" My old insecurities, never truly dormant, were now roaring back to life. "Whoa, hold on," Liam interrupted, his voice firm. "Stop. Breathe. Anthony, you're spiraling. This isn't the old Anthony who just dated casually and kept everyone at arm's length. This is a guy who just shared his deepest vulnerabilities with someone and who just experienced something profoundly intimate. You're invested. And from what you told me, Mark sounds just as invested, if not more." "But what if he's not?" I countered, the fear a tight knot in my stomach. "What if it's just the intensity of a new connection? How many times have I heard that distance makes the heart grow fonder is a lie?" "Okay, here's the thing," Liam said, his voice full of steady reason. "Distance doesn't make anything. It either exposes what's already there or it strengthens it if the foundation is solid. You guys just laid a pretty massive foundation, Anthony. He was vulnerable with you, you were vulnerable with him. That's not a temporary high, that's real emotional work." He continued, "And listen to yourself. You're talking about if he meets someone, or if you push him away. That's you projecting your past fears onto a completely new situation. Mark sounds different, Anthony. He sounds like someone who actually sees you. Someone who wants to break down those walls, not reinforce them. Give him and yourselves some credit." Liam's words were a much-needed splash of cold water. He was right. I was falling back into old patterns of thinking, allowing past hurts to taint a potentially beautiful present. This wasn't a casual fling, this was Mark, and what we shared felt undeniably real, raw, and exhilarating. "You're right," I admitted, feeling a small knot of tension loosen in my chest. "I'm spiraling. It's so much, so fast, and I'm not used to it." "Good," Liam said, a note of genuine warmth in his voice. "It means you're finally letting yourself feel, and that's a huge step. So here's what you do. You enjoy the week you have left with him before he leaves. You solidify this connection. And then you trust him. You trust yourself. And you communicate. Because if you two can talk through fears like that, you can handle a couple of weeks apart." His advice, as always, was practical and compassionate. It was exactly what I needed to hear. The thought of those 12 days still loomed, but now, instead of pure dread, there was also a flicker of resolve. We had built something strong in a short time. We had peeled back layers, exposed vulnerabilities, and embraced a profound intimacy. If that wasn't a foundation, I didn't know what was. The next few days were a blur of intense togetherness. Mark and I clung to every moment, trying to condense weeks of connection into a few short days. We went on long walks through the city, exploring hidden cafes and overlooked parks. We cooked elaborate meals in my kitchen, laughing as we inevitably made a mess. We spent hours just talking, lying on my couch, his arm around me, sharing more stories, more dreams, more quiet confessions. Each conversation deepened our understanding. Each touch solidified our bond. I found myself opening up even more, sharing details about my past I hadn't even consciously realized I'd been holding back. A childhood insecurity about my appearance, a brief period of feeling lost after college, the nuanced reasons behind the fizzling of previous relationships. Mark listened with unwavering attention, offering empathy, not judgment. And in turn, he continued to reveal more of himself, showing me the subtle scars of his own past, the moments that had shaped him into the thoughtful, resilient man he was today. We didn't shy away from discussing his upcoming trip. We talked about how we'd stay in touch, the time difference, the challenges of spotty international Wi-Fi. It was practical, yes, but it was also another testament to our burgeoning commitment. We were actively planning to navigate this challenge together, rather than letting it just happen to us. "I'm going to miss you like crazy, you know," Mark admitted one evening, his voice soft, as we lay in bed, the city lights painting muted patterns on the ceiling. He pulled me closer, burying his face in my hair. "This feels like a cruel joke. To find you now and then have to leave." "I'll miss you too," I whispered, meaning it with every fiber of my being. The thought of 12 days without his laugh, without his touch, without the profound sense of connection he brought into my life already felt like a gaping hole. But then I remembered Liam's words and Mark's own promise. This wasn't an ending, it was a test, and we would face it. The night before he left, we didn't do anything extraordinary. We ordered in, watched a silly movie, and just held each other. It was quiet, tender, tinged with the bittersweet knowledge of the impending separation. There was an unspoken agreement to cherish these last hours, to soak in each other's presence. As he packed his small carry-on, I sat on the edge of his bed, watching him. He moved with a quiet efficiency, his movements familiar now. He wasn't just a stranger I'd met weeks ago. He was becoming an integral part of my world. The thought was both comforting and utterly terrifying. He closed the zipper, then turned to me, a small, sad smile on his face. "Well, that's it. Ready as I'll ever be." I stood and walked over to him, wrapping my arms around his waist, resting my head against his chest. I could feel the steady beat of his heart beneath my ear, a rhythm that was fast becoming as familiar and essential as my own. "Just come back to me, okay?" I mumbled, the words heartfelt and vulnerable. He pulled back slightly, cupping my face in his hands, his thumbs gently stroking my cheeks. His gaze was intense, full of emotion. "Always, Anthony. Always." He kissed me then, a long, lingering kiss that was a promise, a farewell, and a reaffirmation of everything we had built. It tasted of unspoken dreams, of anxieties acknowledged, and of a future we were both tentatively, hopefully, stepping into together. As I watched him walk out of his apartment door and down the hallway, a sense of profound loneliness settled over me. But beneath that, a stronger, more resilient feeling began to bloom. It was hope. Hope that what we had was strong enough to endure distance, strong enough to survive the test. I had shed my layers, and Mark had shed his. We had truly seen each other, and that, I realized, was a powerful foundation for whatever came next. The buckle had been undone, and the journey had truly begun. The late afternoon sun cast long, lazy shadows across my living room, painting the familiar space in hues of orange and gold. It was a beautiful light, usually one that filled me with a quiet contentment, but today it felt heavy, almost melancholic. I sat on the sofa, a half-read book forgotten on the cushion beside me, my gaze fixed on the dust motes dancing in the sunbeams. My mind, however, was miles away, grappling with a decision that felt too monumental for a single evening. Mark was due back any moment. He'd spent the day at a conference, and I knew he'd be tired, but the conversation we needed to have couldn't wait. It had been simmering between us for weeks, an unspoken pressure building, and now it was time for it to boil over. His company had offered him a significant promotion, a dream role, really, but it meant relocating to Seattle, a city I'd never even visited, a world away from the life we'd so carefully, so beautifully built here. My chest tightened with a familiar ache, a knot of old fears and new anxieties twisting together. It wasn't just the idea of moving, of leaving my job, my friends, my routine. It was the deeper fears that this opportunity, however incredible for Mark, might become a wedge between us. Could our relationship withstand such a seismic shift? Could I withstand it? I'd always been the one to resist change, to cling to the comfortable, the known. Mark, on the other hand, was an adventurer at heart, always seeking the next challenge, the next horizon. It was one of the things I loved about him, his boundless enthusiasm, his unwavering optimism. But right now, it felt like a chasm opening between our natures. I closed my eyes, picturing the first time I met him, that absurdly bold, utterly unforgettable encounter. He'd walked into the coffee shop where I was trying to read, radiating an energy that filled the room. He'd ordered a complicated, artisanal brew, and then, instead of taking his coffee to go, he'd turned to me, a casual, devastatingly confident smile on his face. "Excuse me," he'd said, his voice a low rumble that instantly commanded attention. "I hope you don't mind me asking, but are you single?" I remembered the blush that had crept up my neck, the stammered "yes," and then the moment he'd slowly, deliberately unbuckled his belt. My breath had hitched, my mind racing through a dozen wildly inappropriate scenarios, my heart doing a frantic dance against my ribs. But then he'd simply reached into his jeans pocket, retrieved his wallet, and pulled out a card. "Great," he'd winked, handing it to me. "I'm Mark. Call me." It was a business card, impeccably designed, for his fledgling graphic design studio. He'd buckled his belt back up with a flourish, grabbed his coffee, and left, leaving me utterly flustered, intrigued, and secretly, thrillingly, amused. It had been such a ridiculous, audacious move, and yet it had worked. I'd called him a week later, my curiosity having far outstripped my initial embarrassment. That first date had spiraled into another, then another, and before I knew it, Mark was not just a presence in my life, but the very core of it. He'd chipped away at my carefully constructed walls, exposing vulnerabilities I hadn't known existed, and then he'd loved those parts of me too. He'd taught me to laugh louder, to dream bigger, to trust in a future I'd once thought unattainable. But even with all that growth, the old fears still lurked, insidious and persistent. My last serious relationship had ended disastrously, leaving me wary of grand gestures and long-term plans. The pain of that betrayal had etched itself deep, making me cautious with my heart, even with Mark, who had proven time and again that he was nothing like my past. He was honest, loyal, and his love was a constant, warm current that carried me. So why was I still so terrified? The sound of keys jingling in the lock jolted me back to the present. The door opened, and Mark stepped in, his familiar silhouette filling the doorway. He looked tired, a faint stubble darkening his jaw, but his eyes, when they met mine, were full of that easy warmth I knew so well. "Hey, stranger," he said, dropping his bag by the door. "Long day. Smells good in here. Did you cook?" I managed a weak smile. "Just reheated some leftovers. Come sit." He walked over, shedding his jacket, and without a word, pulled me into a hug. His arms felt strong and safe around me, his scent, a a mix of his cologne and the faint, earthy smell of his skin, filling my senses. For a moment, I just clung to him, wishing we could stay in this bubble of comfort forever, free from difficult conversations and uncertain futures. "You okay?" he murmured, pulling back slightly to look at my face, his brow furrowed, instantly picking up on my tension. "You seem quiet." I sighed, pulling away to sit back on the sofa, patting the cushion beside me. He sat down, turning his body towards me, his hand finding mine and lacing our fingers together. The simple contact was grounding. "We need to talk about Seattle," I began, my voice a little shakier than I would have liked. He nodded, his gaze steady. "I know." He squeezed my hand. "It's been on my mind all day, all week, really." "What are you thinking?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral, but my heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I knew meant he was weighing his words carefully. "It's huge, Anthony. This isn't just a promotion. It's a chance to lead a whole new division, to innovate, to build something from the ground up. It's everything I've been working towards." His eyes lit up slightly as he spoke of it, and a pang of guilt shot through me. I didn't want to dim his light, to hold him back. "I understand that," I said softly. "I really do. And I'm incredibly proud of you, Mark. This is amazing. But what about us?" He tightened his grip on my hand. "That's the core of it, isn't it? I wouldn't even consider it if it meant losing you. You know that, right?" His sincerity was palpable, but it didn't ease the knot in my stomach. "I do," I admitted. "But long distance, that's not something I'm good at. And I have my life here, Mark. My job, my friends, my family, this apartment, our apartment." I gestured around the room, the space that had become so intrinsically ours. He took a deep breath. "I know, and I haven't taken any of that lightly. I've been going over every scenario in my head. What if you came with me? We could find a new place there, a new start. You could look for a new job, something fresh. Or what if I commuted back and forth every other weekend? It's not ideal, but it's an option." The thought of uprooting everything, of leaving the familiarity that cocooned me, sent a shiver of dread down my spine. And the idea of a long-distance relationship, with sporadic visits, felt like a slow, painful amputation of what we had. My past relationship had crumbled under far less pressure. I felt the old insecurities rising, whispers of, "You're not enough. You'll be abandoned again." "Anthony," he said, his voice gentler now, noticing my withdrawal. "Talk to me. What's really going on in your head?" I pulled my hand from his, needing to use both, to trace patterns on my jeans. It's a lot. I feel like I'm being asked to choose between everything I've built here and you. And I know that's not fair, but that's how it feels." My voice cracked slightly on the last word. "It's not a choice between me and your life, Anthony," he corrected, his voice firm but tender. "It's a choice about our life, about what our future looks like, together." He leaned closer, trying to catch my eye. "I don't want you to give up anything for me. I want us to build something new, something even better, wherever we are." "But what if it's not better?" I finally looked at him, my eyes probably brimming with the fear I couldn't quite articulate. "What if it's worse? What if we move there and I hate it? What if I can't find a job I love? What if it puts a strain on us we can't recover from? What if it breaks us?" The last sentence was barely a whisper. He reached out again, gently cupping my cheek. His thumb stroked my skin, a gesture of profound comfort. "Anthony," he said, his voice imbued with a quiet intensity, "do you really think so little of what we have? Do you think our love is so fragile that a change of scenery could shatter it?" His words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they highlighted my own deep-seated insecurity. He was right. Part of me, the old wounded part, did think our love might be fragile. It was a reflex, a defense mechanism born from past hurt. No, I mumbled, shaking my head. No, I don't think that. Not consciously. It's just, I'm scared, Mark. Terrified, actually. I've never trusted anyone like I trust you. I've never loved anyone like I love you. And the thought of losing that, it's unbearable. The admission hung in the air, heavy with vulnerability. He pulled me into him, holding me tight, his chin resting on my head. You won't lose it, Anthony. Not because of a city or a job. We're stronger than that. He stroked my back, a rhythmic, soothing motion. I'm scared too, you know. Scared of losing you, scared of making the wrong decision for us, but I also know that I want to face those fears with you, not alone. We stayed like that for a long time, the silence punctuated only by our breathing. His words, I want to face those fears with you, not alone, resonated deeply within me. He wasn't asking me to sacrifice. He was asking me to share, to embark on an adventure, together. And for the first time, a tiny spark of excitement flickered amidst the fear. Tell me more about Seattle, I said, my voice muffled against his shirt. What's it like? He pulled back, a soft smile gracing his lips, relief evident in his eyes. It's beautiful, Anthony. Mountains, water, a vibrant art scene, tech hub, which means lots of opportunities. Good food, amazing coffee, of course. He chuckled, a low, comforting sound. It's a city of reinvention, of innovation, and it's only a few hours' flight from here, so visiting friends and family wouldn't be impossible. He started to paint a picture, not of a scary, unknown place, but of a potential new home, full of possibilities. He talked about exploring the Pacific Northwest, finding new hiking trails, discovering cozy cafes, building a life that was distinctly ours in a new environment. He wasn't just talking about his job, he was talking about our future. What about your job? He asked, his tone gentle. What would you do? I don't know, I admitted. I'd have to look, see what's out there. Maybe it's a chance to try something new, something I wouldn't have considered here. The words felt foreign on my tongue, an unexpected willingness emerging from the depths of my usual caution. It was a terrifying thought, but also strangely liberating. Exactly, he said, his smile widening. It's an opportunity, Anthony, for both of us. It's a chance to grow, to challenge ourselves, and to do it together. He took my hands in his again, his gaze unwavering, full of love and a quiet determination. I'm not saying it'll be easy. It'll be hard. Probably one of the hardest things we've ever done. But I promise you, we'll do it together. Every step of the way. I'll be your anchor, and you'll be my sail. His metaphor struck a chord deep within me. He was right. We were anchors for each other, grounding each other in turbulent times, but we also propelled each other forward, exploring new territories, pushing past perceived limits. That was the essence of our relationship: balance, mutual support, unwavering belief. I thought about the man in front of me, the one who had so boldly, so unforgettably unbuckled his belt that day, not as a crude gesture, but as an act of pure, unadulterated confidence and a surprising hint of vulnerability. He had shown me his true self from the start: direct, passionate, unafraid to go after what he wanted. And what he wanted, he had made clear, was me. Always me. And I, in turn, had grown. The cautious, guarded Anthony, who preferred the sidelines, had slowly, almost imperceptibly, started to step into the spotlight of his own life, propelled by Mark's unwavering belief in him. I'd taken chances, spoken my mind, and allowed myself to be truly, deeply loved. And in doing so, I had found a strength I never knew I possessed. Okay, I said, a tremor in my voice, but a newfound resolve solidifying in my heart. Okay, Mark, let's do it. His eyes widened slightly, then broke into a radiant smile that transformed his whole face. He pulled me into another fierce hug, spinning me slightly on the sofa. Are you serious? He whispered, joy bubbling in his voice. Serious, I confirmed, laughing, a genuine, unburdened laugh that felt like sunshine after a long storm. But you have to promise me one thing. He pulled back, his eyes twinkling. Anything. We're getting a bigger bed, I declared playfully, and an espresso machine, and a subscription to a really good local coffee roaster. He burst out laughing, a deep, booming sound that filled the room and chased away the lingering shadows. Deal, Anthony, all of it, and we'll explore every single coffee shop in Seattle just to find the best one. We spent the rest of the evening talking, planning, dreaming. We discussed practicalities, fears, and hopes. I found myself feeling excited, a thrill of anticipation mixing with the lingering nerves. It wasn't an abandonment of my old life, it was an expansion of it, a new chapter, a shared adventure. Later, as we lay in bed, the city lights twinkling outside our window, Mark held me close, his arm a warm weight across my chest. You know, I murmured, tracing patterns on his arm, that first day we met, when you unbuckled your belt? He chuckled softly. Oh God, I can't believe I actually did that. You looked completely shell-shocked. I was, I admitted, smiling into his shoulder. I thought you were either incredibly bold or completely insane. Turns out you're a little bit of both. He kissed the top of my head. And you, my love, are the calm in my storm, the anchor to my wild impulses. But you also push me, make me see things differently. You're my sail, too, guiding me. I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. It wasn't about the specific actions we took or the places we lived. It was about the unwavering connection, the shared journey, the belief that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. He was my anchor, yes, the steadying force that grounded me. But he had also become the wind in my sails, urging me towards horizons I hadn't dared to dream of alone. And I, in turn, would do the same for him. We didn't know what Seattle held for us, or what challenges we'd encounter along the way. But as I drifted off to sleep in Mark's arms, listening to the steady beat of his heart, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever storms we faced, we would navigate them together. Our anchor was strong, and our sails were unfurled, ready for the open sea. And that, I realized, was more than enough. It was everything. It was